The Black Veil by Charles Dickens. One winter's evening, towards the close of the year 1800, or within a year or two of that time, a young medical practitioner recently established in business was seated by a cheerful fire in his little parlor, listening to the wind which was beating the rain in pattering drops against the window, or rumbling dismally in the chimney. The night was wet and cold. He had been walking through mud and water the whole day, and was now comfortably reposing in his dressing gown and slippers, more than half asleep and less than half awake, revolving 1,000 matters in his wandering imagination. First, he thought how hard the wind was blowing and how cold, sharp rain would be at that moment, beating in his face if he were not comfortably housed at home. Then his mind reverted to his annual Christmas visit to his native place and dearest friends. He thought how glad they would all be to see him, how happy it would make Rose if he could only tell her that he had found a patient at last, and hoped to have more, and to come down again in a few months' time and marry her, and take her home to gladden his lonely fireside and stimulate him to fresh exertions. Then he began to wonder when his first patient would appear, or whether he was destined by a special dispensation of Providence never to have any patients at all. And then he thought about Rose again, and dropped to sleep and dreamed about her, till the tones of her sweet, merry voice sounded in his ears, and her soft, tiny hand rested on his shoulder. There was a hand upon his shoulder, but it was neither soft nor tiny, its owner being a corpulent, round-headed boy who, in consideration of the sum of 1 shilling per week and his food, was let out by the parish to carry medicine and messages. As there was no demand for the medicine, however, and no necessity for the messages, he usually occupied his unemployed hours, averaging 14 a day, in abstracting peppermint drops, taking animal nourishment, and going to sleep. "A lady, sir! A lady!" whispered the boy, rousing his master with a shake. "What lady?" cried out our friend, starting up, not quite certain that his dream was an illusion and half expecting that it might be Rose herself. "What lady? Where?" "There, sir," replied the boy, pointing to the glass door leading into the surgery with an expression of alarm which the very unusual apparition of a customer might have tended to excite. The surgeon looked towards the door and started himself for an instant on beholding the appearance of his unlooked-for visitor. It was a singularly tall woman, dressed in deep mourning, and standing so close to the door that her face almost touched the glass. The upper part of her figure was carefully muffled in a black shawl as if for the purpose of concealment, and her face was shrouded by a thick black veil. She stood perfectly erect. Her figure was drawn up to its full height. And though the surgeon felt that the eyes beneath the veil were fixed on him, she stood perfectly motionless, and evinced by no gesture whatsoever the slightest consciousness of his having turned towards her. "Do you wish to consult me?" he inquired with some hesitation, holding open the door. It opened inwards, and therefore the action did not alter the position of the figure, which still remained motionless on the same spot. She slightly inclined her head in token of acquiescence. "Pray, walk in," said the surgeon. The figure moved a step forward, and then, turning its head in the direction of the boy, to his infinite horror, appeared to hesitate. "Leave the room, Tom," said the young man, addressing the boy whose large round eyes had been extended to their utmost width during this brief interview. "Draw the curtain and shut the door." The boy drew a green curtain across the glass part of the door, retired into the surgery, closed the door after him, and immediately applied one of his large eyes to a keyhole on the other side. The surgeon drew a chair to the fire and motioned the visitor to a seat. The mysterious figure slowly moved towards it. As the blaze shone upon the black dress, the surgeon observed that the bottom of it was saturated with mud and rain. "You are very wet," he said. "I am," said the stranger in a low, deep voice. "And you are ill?" added the surgeon compassionately, for the tone was that of a person in pain. "I am," was the reply. "Very ill, not bodily, but mentally. It is not for myself or on my own behalf," continued the stranger, "that I come to you. If I labored under bodily disease, I should not be out alone at such an hour or on a night such as this. And if I were afflicted with it 24 hours hence, God knows how gladly I would lie down and pray to die. It is for another that I beseech your aid, sir. I may be mad to ask him for it. I think I am, but night after night, through the long dreary hours of watching and weeping, the thought has ever been present to my mind, and though even I see the hopelessness of human assistance availing him, the bare thought of laying him in his grave without it makes my blood run cold." And a shudder, such as the surgeon well knew art could not produce, trembled through the speaker's frame. There was a desperate earnestness in this woman's manner that went to the young man's heart. He was young in his profession and had not yet witnessed enough of the miseries which are daily presented before the eyes of its members to have grown comparatively callous to human suffering. "If," he said, rising hastily, "the person of whom you speak be in so hopeless a condition as you describe, not a moment is to be lost. I will go with you instantly. Why did you not obtain medical advice before?" "Because it would have been useless before, because it is useless even now," replied the woman, clasping her hands passionately. The surgeon gazed for a moment on the black veil, as if to ascertain the expression of the features beneath it. Its thickness, however, rendered such a result impossible.